With Boko Haram on the rampage, can Nigeria survive the violence? In an exclusive interview, I'll ask the country's new president, Muhammadu Buhari. I'm Mehdi Hassan, also on the show. Before the recent outbreak of violence in Israel and the occupied territories, I sat down with the retired Saudi general who's been in secret talks with Tel Aviv. So, are Saudi Arabia and Israel cozying up in a new anti-Iran alliance? And should Palestinians feel betrayed? That's our debate. But first, another week, another round of suicide bombings in Nigeria, Cameroon and Chad. How do you defeat a group as vicious as Boko Haram? With the US announcing plans to send 300 troops to Cameroon to aid in the fight, can Nigeria's new president deliver on his promise to stamp out Boko Haram by the end of the year? This week's headliner from Abuja, Nigerian President Muhammadu Buhari. President Buhari, thanks for joining me on Upfront. Earlier this year, you became the leader of a country facing a huge drop in the price of its biggest export, oil, with corruption out of control and with Boko Haram still massacring hundreds of Nigerians month after month. Is it fair to say that your country is in a state of crisis?
Yeah, certainly we have been going through crisis, which we properly articulated during our campaigns, and we identified security, problem of economy, unemployment, and corruption, as we mentioned. But since we were sworn in, I believe positive action has been taken, and the results are very clear to us here and to those who are keenly observing our development. We have been able to reorganize the military. They have retrained. They are in the process of re-equipping, and they are certainly gaining grounds against Boko Haram.
Let's talk about Boko Haram, whose brutal campaign of violence has led to more than 20,000 deaths since 2009, more than 1.5 million Nigerians displaced from their homes in the north of the country. You've told your army chiefs, I believe, that you expect Boko Haram to be defeated by the end of this year, by December. Surely that's completely unachievable. That's a fantasy deadline.
Yeah, well, you are entitled to your own opinion. When I gave the service chiefs a target of end of December, it's because I'm physically on the ground. And maybe you would like to recall that we have got a Lake Chad Basin Commission comprising Cameroon, Chad, Niger, Nigeria, and Benin. And it's known that Nigeria is the main battleground. And we have agreed among ourselves to dedicate a number of troops in certain places by the end of last month, so that with the coming of the dry season, by the end of there will be a spontaneous move against Boko Haram in their area of operation in the sub-region.
But you say you want them defeated by December. They spent the past week blowing up targets in Nigeria, in Cameroon, in Chad. More than 1,000 people have been killed by Boko Haram since you were elected president in March of this year. Things don't seem to be getting any better. Nigerians don't seem to be any safer.
On the ground, physically, things are getting better. I have just mentioned that after the reorganization, we put new service chiefs. Troops that were in the front were put back, retrained, re-equipped, and sent back again. And if you are observing clearly the area of operation, the two states, mainly Borno and Yobe, Boko Haram is mainly reduced now to using IEDs, improvised explosive devices, in
Mr. President, 1,000 people dead since you were elected president. That doesn't sound like Nigerians are safer from Boko Haram.
Yes, well, at least we are being honest about it. Whenever there is an attack, there are casualties, we mention it. We don't hide anything from anybody. But definitely in terms of occupying ground, we are gaining ground, and Boko Haram is virtually now confined to Sambisa forest. And with NATO operations, well coordinated, they are really fully disorganized. And as soon as the rainy season comes, which is by the end of the year, coinciding by what promise we made, Boko Haram will virtually be out of their main stronghold. And that will be the end of it. But what we cannot guarantee, really, is the question of using IEDs, improvised explosive devices, in public places. That operation by Boko Haram may continue beyond the targets that we gave. But articulated attack by Boko Haram on townships, on military installations will certainly stop.
And if you don't meet your December deadline, what will you do? Will you apologize? Will you resign? What's the repercussions if you don't meet your deadline?
Well, one thing you will certainly remember, I will not resign. I will be determined to stay and fight it out.
Okay, and it's been 18 months now since more than 200 Chibok schoolgirls were taken captive by Boko Haram. They've still not yet been found. When you were running for president, you said to Aljazeera that the then government knew where they were, and you attacked your predecessor for not giving a, quote, cohesive reason as to why he couldn't rescue the girls. Now you're in charge of the government, so why haven't you been able to find them yet?
We have an idea where the girls are. Our main problem is, and what we promised to the constituencies where these girls have been abducted to, that we wanted to rescue them alive. There are Boko Haram leadership that wanted us to discuss, but we have to prove they are bona fide. We want to make sure they have to prove to us that they are alive, they are well, and then we can promise them and negotiate with them.
So you will negotiate with them? You would do a deal with Boko Haram, offer them money or a prisoner exchange? You're willing to do that to get the girls back?
Yeah, we said it and we meant it. If we are satisfied that the girls are alive.
What will you offer if they're alive? What will you offer, money or prisoners?
Well, it depends on the negotiation with the leadership of Boko Haram.
Okay. The Nigerian military hasn't just failed to defeat Boko Haram, it's also carried out massive human rights abuses in the process. The US State Department, the European Parliament, Human Rights Watch, Amnesty International, they've all documented extrajudicial killings, torture, arbitrary arrests, burning down of homes, plenty of abuses by the Nigerian military. What are you doing as president and as a former general to stop all of that from happening?
We promise to investigate and punish all those that are responsible.
You say you're going to investigate and prosecute. Amnesty International this week opened an office inside of Nigeria. But have you done what Amnesty has recommended? They've given you the names of several senior military officers who should be investigated for war crimes. You've sacked a couple of them, but have you actually investigated them? Are you going to prosecute those 9 named individuals that Amnesty International has given you?
I haven't received that report personally, but the reorganization of the military is part of the compliance with the observation raised by Amnesty International. If I get those documents, the way you seem to be so confident to have received them.
Well, they're available publicly online. They were published a month after you took office. Your spokesman has acknowledged that he's read the report. The names are out there, and you haven't investigated or prosecuted anyone as far as we know. Are you going to prosecute the officers who are accused of committing war crimes?
It's very difficult for me to start prosecuting people on the newspaper publication. I made the undertaking that if I get that report, I will take action. The person you said my spokesperson said I have seen the report. I don't think any of my spokesperson, the bona fide my spokesperson, has given me that report, and I just put it in the waste paper basket or somewhere.
But Mr. President, this is not a new report. This has been going on for years. John Kerry, the US Secretary of State, talked about human rights violations from the Nigerian military in 2013. Human Rights Watch documented the burning of homes, torture in 2014. This is not a new allegation.
What I want us to go beyond the talking. All you are telling me that the United States Secretary of State have talked about it, Amnesty International have written, and I have told you that I haven't received this authentic document you are referring to. When I get that document, I read it, I assure you if there are those that are guilty, they will be identified and they will be punished according to Nigerian laws.
Okay, well, the human rights groups have put the evidence out there for several years now. Can I just clarify with you? Boko Haram claim to support what they call Sharia law. They've stoned women to death. They've cut the hands off of thieves. Do you yourself, I know you're a Muslim from northern Nigeria, do you support the imposition of these types of punishments across Nigeria? Because there is a quote from you from 2001 in which you allegedly say, God willing, we will not stop the agitation for the total implementation of the Sharia in the country. Is that still your view, Mr. President?
Nigerians, by their constitution, have the right to pursue any religion they want to. But there is a fundamental issue here. No religion advocates hurting the innocent. Boko Haram are finding it difficult to get volunteers voluntarily now because they can't go and slaughter children in their sleep, kill people in the churches, kill people in mosques, in motor parks.
Mr. President, we all agree on that. I'm asking you about punishments.
Will you allow me to finish, please? They can't kill people, innocent people, and shout Allahu Akbar. They either don't believe God is great or they don't know what they are talking about. This clearly, Nigerians in the constituencies where Boko Haram are executing people, cutting hands, stoning them, as you mentioned, have understood that Boko Haram is anything but Islamic. This is very clear. We said it, we put it in writing, we mentioned it.
You are very clear on that, and I think we all agree that Boko Haram are not the godly people they claim to be. I'm asking you about the punishments. Do you support the use of stoning for adultery or cutting off of hands as part of Nigerian law across Nigeria, as some say you support?
No, Nigerian law does not allow for that.
And you don't want to change the law to allow stoning or any of these more brutal punishments to be brought in?
I cannot change it. I haven't been voted by majority of Nigerians to change the Nigerian constitution.
Just before we finish, one last question. You ran for election on a campaign of change. You were the change candidate. Many people would say you're a 72-year-old ex-general. You were a military ruler, a military dictator in the 1980s. How are you the change that Nigerians want, that young Nigerians are so keen for? And can you guarantee that you won't become a dictator again?
Under this system, I cannot be a dictator. I have just told you the system we are following now. The people I wanted to be in my cabinet, I have to send them to the Senate. And it's up to the Senate to find them suitable or unsuitable to be in the Nigerian cabinet. Whatever the Senate brought back by the constitution of our country, I have to act on it.
Do you regret your rule in the 80s? You were accused of human rights abuses, of being a military dictator, of clamping down on the press. Do you regret that period of your life? Now you're a Democrat?
If there is any injustice that can be proved against me when I was there, I will gladly apologize. But trying to stop corruption and indiscipline is not an injustice. And in fact, my coming back now under a different system is because of my performance in the last time where I was being accused of dictatorship. Because people have seen discipline, they have seen accountability, they have seen order, and therefore they wanted it back. That's why the majority of Nigerians now voted me back under a different system.
Mr. President, I believe we've run out of time. You have to go. Thank you so much for joining me on Upfront.
Very kind of you. Thank you.
You don't need me to tell you that when it comes to the stats on gun deaths, the United States is in a league of its own. But here's 3 things you may not be aware of when it comes to the politics behind the gun control debate in the US. First, did you know that the much-cited Second Amendment
I am extremely pro-Second Amendment.
has provided Americans with an individual right to bear arms for only the last 7 of the country's 239-year history? Yet, prior to a very controversial Supreme Court ruling in 2008, most US Supreme Court justices and attorneys general going back more than 2 centuries agreed that the Second Amendment was about protecting military or militia activities rather than, say, disturbed young men trying to buy assault rifles at gun shows. Former Supreme Court Chief Justice Warren Burger called the so-called Second Amendment objection to gun control one of the greatest pieces of fraud on the American people by any special interest group. Burger was referring, of course, to the National Rifle Association, the NRA. But did you know that up until the 1970s, the NRA wasn't all that interested in gun rights and more interested in gun safety and, yes, even gun control? In fact, while this is what the NRA boss says now,
American gun owners will never surrender our Second Amendment freedom, period.
This is what the NRA president told Congress back in 1934. Carrying guns should be sharply restricted and only under licenses. So basically, the NRA doesn't agree with the NRA. Third, most US conservatives these days are quick to invoke their hero, former President Ronald Reagan.
I'm a Reagan conservative.
But did you know, and do they know, that Reagan, who remember was shot in the chest in 1981, backed gun control in 1991. In fact, earlier as governor of California, Reagan signed into law a 15-day waiting period on handgun sales. What a traitor. The reality is, Reagan quite liked the idea of background checks, the NRA hasn't always opposed gun control, and the Second Amendment hasn't always meant what people think it means. He's the Saudi military man making secret overtures to Israel. In June, retired Major General Anwar Eshki, a close advisor to the Saudi royal family, shared a platform with Benjamin Netanyahu's top diplomat, and the two men outlined their common opposition to Iran. So is this the start of a new anti-Iranian alliance? And are Palestinians being thrown under the bus in the process? Joining me in the arena from Jeddah is General Eshki himself, the chair of the Middle East Center for Strategic and Legal Studies. I'm also joined here in the studio by Rula Jibril, foreign policy analyst, journalist, and author of the acclaimed novel Miral, which offers a unique portrait of the Israel-Palestine conflict. Thank you both for joining me on Up Front. General Eshki, is it fair to say that such is the Saudi opposition to Iran that your country is now willing to bury the hatchet, is willing to do a deal with Israel against Iran? My enemy's enemy is my friend.
This is not accurate from me because Saudi Arabia against the regime of Iran, and Saudi Arabia different point of view from Israel. Israel worried about the atomic bomb, but Saudi Arabia worried about Iran to interfere and to destabilize the area in Arab countries. For that reason, there is different point of view between us and Israel.
But what do you want the relationship between Saudi Arabia and Israel to be? What do you want it to be like?
Saudi Arabia want Israel announce that they accepting the Arab initiative. Then we can discuss with Israel, maybe Palestinian discuss with Israel, and Saudi Arabia support that. We don't like Israel become isolated in the area. We don't like Israel become fighting the Palestinian and Palestinian fighting them, and we are fighting them. We have to cooperate together. This is my idea about that.
Rula Jibril, he says he wants peace with Israel. He wants them to accept the Saudi peace plan of 2002, and he's worried about Iran destabilizing the region. So he's talking to Israeli people, Israeli officials. What's wrong with that?
There's nothing wrong with that. Actually, it's great that now the Saudis are trying to talk, except that the Saudis don't understand two things. One is Iran has a role in destabilizing the region, but they have a bigger role in destabilizing the region. Look what we are seeing.
Who has a bigger role in?
Saudi Arabia. Look at their interference. They are financing terrorists and tyrant alike with one goal: to export their Wahhabi, exclusionary, puritanical sect of Islam. And everybody else has to be killed, whether they're Shia or Sunni moderates. Regarding the Palestinian issue, it's a smokescreen. The Israelis have spoken, General, and have spoken clearly. And in a democracy, and I know that you don't maybe understand how democracy works, it's very clear. When people vote for a government and decided
for the
Netanyahu government, and the Israeli voted for that government doesn't want any peace initiative, not the American one, let alone the Saudi one.
Let General Eshki respond.
We in Saudi Arabia did not support the radicals. We are against the radicals.
General Eshki, you have to explain to the people why ISIS in their capital Raqqa have Saudi textbooks, because you have more in common with ISIS than any other group in the area.
Ruler, let me ask you a question. A recent poll showed that 52% of Saudis say they see Iran as the biggest threat to Saudi Arabia, and only 18% say they see Israel as a threat. What would you say to those who say that General Eshki, when he reaches out to Israel against Iran, he's simply reflecting Saudi public opinion? He's doing what his people want.
But this is what Saudi have been trying to do since the beginning of their establishment, that their form of Islam is the only legitimate path to God. The polls are reflecting that kind of ideology and that kind of mentality. It's not far away from what ISIS is doing.
Okay, let me bring the subject back to what we were discussing. Saudi Arabia has constantly said it's a champion of the Palestinians over the years. How do you think Palestinians feel when they hear you refer to Benjamin Netanyahu as a strong leader and a logical leader, you called him?
I told about him a strong leader and logical leader because that means not strong against Arabs, but I said he is strong in his country. He can announce about that, because the fanatics in Israel, the radical in Israel, when they accept the initiative, all the Israeli will accept that.
Let's let the smoke screen aside. You are actually dialoguing with a right-wing government who's oppressing Palestinian peoples, negating them any kind of rights, that is actually very vocal about annexing the whole land. General, what you are doing is actually selling out the Arab cause, the Palestinian cause, in the name of one thing, Wahhabism and anti-Shiite sentiment.
The Saudi, you know, we didn't make difference between Shia and Sunnah. I am living with Shia and Sunnah in Medina. No any problem with that. But Iran tried to use that to make separate for between Shia and Sunnah.
A lot of Palestinians say that Saudi Arabia is willing to bomb Yemen for 6 months, the poorest country in the Middle East. But when Israel is bombarding Gaza, there's no Saudi Air Force in sight. There are no Saudi troops ever coming to the rescue of Palestinians in Gaza. What do you say to them?
Yeah, not Saudi Arabia only. We are not bombing the people. We are bombing the
But you're taking military action in
weapons,
Yemen.
The rockets and like that.
Well, actually, you've actually bombed lots of dairy factories and power stations. But deal with the bigger point that you're willing to take military action in Yemen, but you never take any kind of steps to physically protect the Palestinians in Gaza when they're being bombed. That's what a lot of Palestinians say.
The difference, I told the Iranian about that. I told him, you support the Palestinian by weapons, but we support the Palestinian with the money. When we support the Palestinian with money, we want them to live,
General.
to live good. And you
under
give
occupation,
him weapons
General, under
to destroy
occupation,
themselves.
You're not challenging Israel on the two major issues that are relevant to the Palestinian. It's the occupation of the West Bank and Gaza and East Jerusalem, and on the segregations of almost 1.5 million Palestinians inside Israel. You not only betray the Palestinians or even the Israelis, who I hope are not delusional to rely on you, you're betraying the whole Arab Muslim cause.
General, we've got to finish. I want to ask you one last question. Given you've become known for this initiative of yours and this outreach, how long do you think it is? How many years do you think it will be till we see a Saudi embassy in Tel Aviv?
You can ask Mr. Netanyahu if he announced about that he accept the initiative. After that, and give all the rights of Palestinian, Saudi Arabia will start to make embassy in Tel Aviv.
We're going to have to leave it there. Thank you both for joining me in the arena. That's our show. Up Front will be back next week.